Okay, and I'm gonna pin my video. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna knock down my notepad. Can you hold that?
I can.
This will make a good video for the people on YouTube. They'll really enjoy this. So yeah, that's this. And
Come to the Bible teaching, stay for the broken equipment.
stay for the vaudeville.
You might get a lot more hits on this one.
For the wrong reasons, but
We're getting there. We're getting
this
there.
is a strange easel.
Yeah, you know, these were cheap.
Another fundraiser, we need to raise money for a new easel.
Exactly. We bought 6 of these, 5 of these for artwork.
$1.
For the artwork, oh yeah.
These really cheap options on Amazon.com.
Okay,
You might want to turn it a little bit.
yeah, I took the wrong angle.
There you
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Maybe I'll edit that part out. Welcome to our Genesis Bible study here at New Beginnings Christian and Missionary Alliance Church in Poughkeepsie, New York. I'm Pastor Danish House. Tonight is Wednesday, March 24th tonight, so that's exciting. We're getting close to the end of March. One more week of March, right? 30 days. That's September, April, June, November. So next week will be March 31st. And we're making our way through our deep dive in the book of Genesis. So welcome everybody who's here. We got 5 people present in the room, and we've got another 12 maybe who are online. Good to see everybody here. I'm gonna mute everybody who is online. If you would like to speak, you can certainly unmute yourselves. But just for the sake of peace online, we'll mute everybody to start with. And let's pray and we'll dive into our study today. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, this evening. Thanks for this opportunity for us to be together and to look into your word, Lord. And I know that when we look into your word looks back into us. So I'm looking forward to what you're going to say to us tonight. I pray, Lord, that you would bless every person who's participating in this study, Lord, whether it's here in person, whether it's by Zoom, or whether it's later on through YouTube. God, I pray that your Holy Spirit would work in our hearts, that we would spend the time to listen to your word, that it might speak to us and the deepest parts of ourselves, Lord, and to show us what you have to say to us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. So we've got a handout here. This is, I did email this to those of you who are in our group. I've made 5 of them, so I'll pass them out here. This is a handout which will help you in taking notes tonight. This is week 6 of our Bible study. We've done up to Genesis chapter 3. So tonight we're going to be diving into Genesis 4. And how much of Genesis 4 we do will depend on where we determine this passage ends. But that's there. Also want to let you know, I think everybody here, except for Timothy, has a binder. If you like a binder, I do have a 3-hole punch as well, but I didn't bring it out with me. For those of you who are on Zoom, I know that some folks have come by and picked up binders. Feel free to do that. Come by, pick up a binder. We have a 3-hole punch here. We can 3-hole punch your papers, so it'll all fit in your binder. Just as an easy way to keep your stuff organized. If you are watching us on YouTube and you'd like a copy of our handouts, just send an email to our church email address. It's in the description of this video, church@newbeginningscma.org. You can send us an email and we'll email those handouts to you. I got a bunch of handouts for tonight. We're not going to use these other ones until later, but in your emails, you've already received 3 handouts, so those are all going to happen tonight. What else do I need to say to our online people? I don't know. If you're watching on YouTube and you've got questions or comments, you can certainly send it to our church email address, and we're happy to talk with you about any of these things. Well, I want to talk tonight, before we dive into our manuscript, I wanted to talk tonight about a key little interpretive issue that is a factor in the book of Genesis. It was a factor in Genesis 1, 2, and 3, but it becomes a major factor here in Genesis 4 and 5 and some of the other chapters to come. It's the question of numbers in the Bible. I want to talk to you about numbers in the Bible. Numbers in the Bible often seem to have a symbolic meaning in addition to their literal meaning. Okay, if you have God, the earth was created in 7 days. Okay, seven. It's used literally in some senses, right? It to count off the days that are described in Genesis chapter 1, but it's also used symbolically. 7 becomes an important number in the scriptures. They have both a literal meaning and a symbolic meaning. Not in every case, but it's good to have this in your back pocket when you're reading scripture so that you can say, okay, is this an instance in which this number has a symbolic meaning? Here are some of the numbers that have symbolic meanings in the Bible. The first number is 3. Okay, 3 can be a symbolic number in the Bible. Many numbers can be symbolic, but 3 winds up in a lot of different places in the Bible. 3 is, of course, as Christians, we believe that God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that God is a Trinity. And so this is a key number for understanding the Trinity. Many times in the Bible, when things are described in 3s, there is a Trinitarian aspect to that description. Okay. Another symbolic number is that I want to talk about tonight is 7. Yeah, very good. 7 can have a symbolic meaning. Obviously, we have the 7 days of creation, which makes up a week, right? An entire week. That's the origin of the concept of the week. We don't know of any ancient Near Eastern culture that observed the idea of a 7-day week prior to the Israelites. Okay, so when the Israelites come and they have their creation story, this was the invention of the 7-day week, which now, most of the world takes for granted. But so this and it comes from creation, right? This idea of working 6 days and resting 1, and this 7-day creation. Well, you look through the Bible, there's tons of 7s in the Bible. We did a Bible study on the end times. We looked at the book of Revelation, and there were just jillions of 7s in the book of Revelation, right? Bazillions of 7s. One of the things, if you're watching on YouTube, I always joke with my church that I can only count as high as 12 for my number of fingers. And then after that, it's a bajillion, right? It's a bazillion. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then a bazillion is any number over that. So there's a bazillion 7s in the book of Revelation. And 7, typically theologians will think of 7 as being a number of completion, right? It's a complete set is 7. It has reached its fullness. It's reached its completion at 7. Another key symbolic number is 10. For most people, they have 10 fingers, right? 10 toes, okay? And again, 10 as a complete set is an idea there, okay? Israelites, just like most of the other cultures in the ancient Near East, did count by base 10. Okay, they used a base 10 mathematics, just like we use today. And so 10 was a sort of a complete set, was a number of completion. Just shy of 7 is 6. Okay, 6 can also be a symbolic number, either as being an incomplete 7. Okay, sort of not reaching the full measure, or as being sort of the climax in a set of 7. Okay, sometimes 6, like the creation of humanity on day 6, it's the culmination of creation until God rests on the 7th day. It's sort of the peak of creation, the highlight of creation. 6 can be. What's another one? 12, right? There were 12 tribes of Israel. There were 12 disciples. There's a lot of 12s in the Bible. 12 typically will refer to the people of God in some way, whether it's in the Old Testament or the New Testament. 12 can be a number that's symbolic of the people of God. 40 is another one that's a big one. And we'll hit on a couple of 40s in the book of Genesis. I know that a 40 is also a large beer. That's not what I'm talking about. But yeah, 40 is a large number. 40 will often refer to a generation, right? The lifespan, a typical lifespan of a generation or a full period of time. Now, there's also 3.5. Okay, that's kind of a weird one. I'm putting that. I've saved that for last because if you were in the End Times Bible study, you remember that 3.5 as being half of 7 is kind of a broken 7. 3.5 is like something that should be a complete set but isn't. It's broken in half for some reason. Usually a 3.5, an increment of 3.5 is there's going to be 2 of them in a set of 7. So these are biblical, these are numbers, and then multiples of these things, right? 3 times 10, right? Or 3 times 7 for 21, okay? Or you'll find some that are 7 times 12, right? Which is 84. It's oftentimes when these are multiplied together, you'll get significant numbers that are multiples of these numbers. Now, I want to give you some precautionary principles about looking for numbers in the Bible. There's more to it than this, but one of the things that oftentimes people will point out is that in the Hebrew language, in the Hebrew alphabet, the letters of the alphabet each stand for a number. Okay, so that's the way that Hebrews did numbers. Hebrew does numbers. There's no digits, separate digits, right? We have A, B, C, D, E, F, G through Z, but we also have numerals for 1, 2, 3, 4 through 0. Okay, Hebrew doesn't have numerals. Hebrew uses letters in place of numerals. And so if you take someone's name, let's say Adam, Adam, okay, there's a the Hebrew for Adam would be, I didn't write this down. Would be, I'm gonna pretend that I'm getting that right. Okay, I think that's what it is. So you have the Hebrew letter that often stands for A. You have the Hebrew letter that stands for D, and the Hebrew letter that stands for M. Okay, each one has a numerical value. I don't know what they are, honestly. But you can take A plus D plus M, and you can add up for a total, which is the number of Adam. Okay, you can do this for any name. You can do this for any word in the Hebrew Bible. Each one has a number, and you can add them up, and the number relates to their place in the alphabet. So you know what? I'm thinking that Adam is not. I think it's this.
Yeah, that's.
I don't want to give you false information.
I have no clue.
So I think it's an Aleph. I think it is the Aleph, the first letter of the alphabet. So you can take any number, any word, and you can add up its number. Now this is interesting. It gets done in Greek as well, although not as readily. Greek doesn't use letters to refer to numerals. Greek has its own numerals. So this is where you get the whole 666 deal, right? Who is the Antichrist in the book of Revelation? Well, we'll assign a number to each letter in a person's name, and then calculate it to see if they add up to 666. Maybe if you can't get there by adding, you can get there through multiplication, or you can get there through division. Let's do some complex math to try to make this name fit the number 666. Well, this sort of thing happens a lot among sort of what I would call the fringy areas of Bible study, okay? There's an argument, for example, that if you count the number of letters in a Bible book, you can find hidden codes, right, that reveal secret mysteries. For example, let's say if you start at the 21st letter of the book of Genesis, and then you count every 50 letters thereafter, okay, then you write only those letters out, that you come up with a code that predicts the future.
Who does this?
And what,
Okay.
and what language and in what?
Which translation,
So
yeah.
you guys are all putting your fingers on the challenge about this, because the truth is you can actually do this with any document in any language, okay?
Right.
Someone took the songs of the Beatles, right, and put the songs of the Beatles into a document, and they ran some computer analysis and were able to come up with codes that predicted the future, okay?
Oh, yeah, that Revelation number 9, remember that one?
Sure, that was backward masking. But yeah, so this idea that, you know, you can find hidden codes in the texts of Scripture. Some people say, well, okay, it's cool. This means the Bible was inspired by God. This is proof the Bible was inspired by God. It's not, unless all the works of Shakespeare are inspired by God, right? Or unless the Webster's Dictionary is inspired by God, because you can run these codes. You can run analyses to find these kinds of codes in any document, any large enough document. I think if you need a supercomputer to find these things, it's probably not evidence that God has left behind for his existence. God's point is he wants to make it plain to everyone, right? And I'm not sure that some would argue, well, you need a supercomputer to find it, so no one could ever have planned it that way. But the truth is, there's no evidence that anybody planned it that way, unless it's also hidden in every other book that's ever been written. One of the things about one of the truths in information science, the study of information, is that it's very easy for what's called noise to sometimes yield meaningful results, seemingly meaningful results. Things that are random can eventually come up with something that seems meaningful. There's that old saying, right, about putting 10,000 monkeys in a room with 10,000 typewriters. Eventually, one of them will type out Romeo and Juliet, right? If you just give it enough time with enough monkeys and enough typewriters, eventually, at random, one of them will type Romeo and Juliet, okay? Because that's how random chance works, right? There is a random string of letters that does give you Romeo and Juliet at some point, because that's just the way that randomness works. There's also what's known as the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. I'm sorry, Sarah Shields, for this analogy, but the Texas sharpshooter fallacy is a story about a guy who went out with his gun and started shooting at his barn. After he was done shooting at the barn, he went over with a can of paint, and he painted a target around his shots, right? The places where the highest concentrations of shots were, he put the bullseye, and then, you know, put the shot. If you shoot first and you paint the target later, anybody can be a sharpshooter, right?
Sounds good to me.
The Texas sharpshooter fallacy says that if you start with an assumption and then try to work and then make your target later. If you start with, then what you wind up doing is you wind up finding something that wasn't actually significant in the first place. So Bible numbers, I think, are like the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Sometimes I think we can get some meaning out of the numbers. The primary meaning out of these numbers is 3, right, or 7. They're numbers that count, but they are used symbolically. They're not used in a code-like manner, I don't believe. Now, if you disagree with me, praise the Lord, may God bless you. But what I found is that traveling down that road leads you to some weird places, and places where I don't recommend that you go. Any questions or thoughts about Bible numbers before we dive into the manuscript study?
Danish, that's the basis of Kabbalah, right?
Yes, so that's a good point. I was talking about this with somebody the the other day, and they raised Kabbalah. Kabbalah is a Jewish sect. It's a mystic sect of Judaism that is based entirely, or massive parts of it are based on this Bible code idea. I talk about it being a supercomputer thing, but it's not. I mean, people with a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of perseverance have found these codes hundreds, thousands of years ago. Okay, so there are codes in there. The codes, I'm using that word advisedly, but finding mystical spells or mystical revelation in the text is not a new phenomenon. It's something that has been around forever. Kabbalah is one, probably the most famous follower of Kabbalah in the United States is a woman named Madonna, right? She's a follower of Kabbalah.
Oh, it's that Kabbalah you're talking about,
Yeah.
where they wear the red string on their, they
Mhm.
wear a string on their arm. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was a different
No,
Kabbalah.
It has to do with Jewish mysticism and the counting of letters. And the whole idea of counting letters is called gematria, if you want to know the term.
Donna's a singer?
Mhm. That's why I
How
thought,
funny is that?
I didn't think it
Her
was
name
that one.
is Madonna and she's Jewish?
She converted to Judaism.
Oh, okay.
She grew up Catholic.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
No,
Okay,
what's
person.
her last name?
Oh, I don't remember.
You did say that it could lead to weird places.
It can,
Yes,
so
I was
So
thinking-
I
there
think
we
she's
are.
a
We're
good
in
example.
place.
Yeah.
it led Madonna to weird places, and now it's leading us to talk about Madonna. So that's weirdness enough for me. Let's move on.
So you just take the letters once in a name? So you took AD and M, so we're not doing ADA, AM? So just one, every first appearance, that's it?
No, Hebrew, as written, in the original Hebrew, there are no vowels, okay? So there's only consonants. So there are two consonants in Hebrew that have no sound, okay? The two consonants in Hebrew that have no sound are this, I think that's ayin, and this, which is aleph, okay? Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Ayin is another one, I don't know which number it is, but neither one of them has a sound. So they're put in there as a placeholder. In Hebrew originally, they're put in as placeholders to say, there's a sound that comes before this consonant sound, okay? So the name Adam just has an aleph, wow, and a mem, AD and an M, okay? But the A is not always, you don't always use the A sound for it. It's a placeholder that you can tag a vowel on. In Hebrew, the vowels typically go under, so there's a vowel like that, there's a vowel like this, there's a vowel like this that's underneath, there's a vowel with two dots underneath. They tag on to a consonant, and so you would say, the consonants sound and then the vowels sound. So in any instance in which you have a Hebrew word or name that starts with a vowel sound, there's a silent consonant at the beginning of it, and it's either one of these. So there you go. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
My Hebrew memory is old. It's been a while since I've actually studied it, so I'm not coming up with the name of this letter. I think it's ayin. Yeah, that's how it goes. And I do study Hebrew every week, but I'm not necessarily doing the names of things. I'm feeling
Pastor.
pain.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm saying.
I missed what you said, what the number 3 represented.
Number 3 typically, oftentimes, represents in some way the presence of God or the Godhead.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Not always, but so when you encounter numbers in the Bible, it's often a good idea to just ask, after you've interpreted them literally, ask, okay, is it possible this carries some symbolic meaning? And the numbers that I gave you are not the only ones that have symbolic meaning. Those are just some. Any other questions or thoughts, comments? All right, we're going to shift over to our manuscript Bible study. If you're watching and participating in this on YouTube, then you need to know that we're using a Bible manuscript to study the scriptures. So what that is it's nothing magical. It's just 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper with the Bible text printed on it, double spaced. with no verse markings or chapter markings. Ours are marked with line numbers. If you would like a copy of the Bible manuscript, it's in the English Standard Version, just email the church office and we'll be happy to send one to you. And this is nothing, crazy. It just makes it easy for us to see the text without distractions and to use markers and pencils to mark it up so we can see new things in it. So we can see cool things in the text without marking up our actual Bibles, our printed Bibles, which we pay tons of money for. So this manuscript that we're using, we're starting on page 7, which page 7 starts with Genesis chapter 4. Starts with, now Adam knew Eve, his wife. Our first question that we always ask when we dive into a new story is, when do you believe this story ends? What's a good stopping point in this text?
Do you have a spare copy of the second manuscript? Because I
In my
missed last week
office.
and I
In my office.
didn't know we were on the new one.
In my office on my coffee table. Can you go get that?
Yeah.
In my office on my coffee table, there's a bunch of sheets of paper there. Dig around, you'll find one. So as you guys were studying this week, what I asked you to do this week was to, number 1, determine when the story ends, and then number 2, to do observation, to do looking into the text. Where did you see the story ending? Someone want to volunteer a first guess or a first?
Page 7, line 22.
Page 7, line 22. And settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Boom. Okay, great.
Same thing.
And so why was that your ending point?
I felt like the story had a close. We had a beginning, a middle, an end. We had a motive, a crime, a punishment.
Yep.
And then we're talking about Cain and his wife, and that's a new story.
Excellent. Okay, good. I think many folks had that. Yeah, that's a great place to stop. It's a perfect place to stop. Did anybody have something different?
I did way on page 8.
Okay, Carol, when did you end it?
Page 8, 13 at the end of name of the Lord.
People began to call upon the name of the Lord, and then it says, "This is the book of
This
the
is the book,
generations of Adam." So-
So
So you marked that as a second division. Yeah, that's great. Did anybody else mark it on page 8, line 13, other than Carol and me?
I did.
Oh,
Evan? Karen?
I actually had 3. Because I had the first one, line 22 as well, but I wanted to make sure that I was accurate in that, so I continued ahead. And then I got to page 8, line 10 after sevenfold, and I said, all right, well, that's the story of Cain and Abel and Cain, and then stopped it there. But then again, I went on and said, all right, well, let me check to see if that's right. And then I went on and then I saw this is the book of the generations of Adam. And I'm like, all right, well, that's definitely starting something new.
Yes, yes.
So that was my third one.
Kevin, why is that starting something new?
Because we learned that earlier, I think week 1.
Yeah.
The-
Anybody remember the word?
Totally dope, something.
Toledo. Yes. Toledo. It is the structural pillars of the book of Genesis, which initiate a new section. So we see a Toledo on page 8, line 13. So for sure, the passage doesn't go beyond that, right? That's a wall that stops everything there. So it's certainly not longer than that because the Toledo is there. And Kevin, what you did is what I'll do when I'm preparing for a sermon, okay? I'll read a passage of scripture and I'll come to what feels like this is the end of the passage. I'll keep going because I could be wrong, right? Maybe there's references to what I just read that will make the picture a little bit more complete. And so what you've experienced, Kevin, was finding a natural stopping place, which I agree fully that line 22 on page 7 is a great stopping place. It is. But if you keep going, what you find is that there's more to the story of Cain that actually directly bears on what you've just read. That sort of adds some more thoughts to it, and I think completes the story a lot better. And particularly the thing that there's a number that makes that happen, right? It's the fact of a number that makes that happen. And we'll get there because we're gonna go with Kevin's suggestion tonight, not just because it's the one that Kevin and Carol and I came up with, but because I think what you'll see is that there's a reason why that's a really good place to stop. The Toledot is sort of a hard brick wall, but I think that you'll also see that there's some repetitions that make that next part very meaningful to connect on to it. So that said, did anybody have anything other than those two stopping points?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is the Toledot the beginning or the end?
Toledot is the beginning of a section,
Okay.
I say.
Because when I read it, I want to say at that time, I say this is the book of the generations of Adam. That to me sounds like a conclusion,
It does.
not a beginning.
It does, but it is, the word Toledot doesn't just appear in Genesis, it appears elsewhere in the Bible. It is in virtually every context, it's clearly the beginning of a section. And what it means is it's introducing a tale. So here's what follows from Adam. Now I'm going to tell you about what came out of Adam. And now I'm going to tell you what came out of the heavens and the earth. Now I'm going to tell you what came out of Enoch, or whatever, not Enoch, but Esau. So I think now there's a scholarly debate about this. Okay, some scholars say the Toledot should end a section, but I would say my argument is that it should begin the section. And I think that makes the most sense out of the book of Genesis. When you see it as the end, there are problems in Genesis that are hard to resolve. When you see it as the beginning, I guess there's always problems that are hard to resolve. When you see it as the beginning, I think there's fewer problems. So we're gonna study up to page 8, line 13. Call upon the name of the Lord, period, just before the Toledot. And there's a bunch of reasons why that's the case, and I hope we'll come across some of them as we study today. But I think you guys are smart to have divided it at page 7, line 22 at the beginning. And I wanna just focus our attention on that section to start, okay? So we'll go into the other sections in just a bit, but tonight I wanna just focus, to start with, I wanna focus on page 7, line 1 through page 7, line 22. Remember that our 3 steps in manuscript study are to look, to listen, and to live, okay? So we're gonna start with our first step here, to look. What are some things that you saw? What are some things that you observed in this first, we're divided into 3 sections, this first section of our text tonight? What stood out to you?
Esther,
Yes.
I noticed that this is the first time we are seeing the name brother,
Brother.
the word brother.
Okay, brother.
There was no brother before. There was no brother or sister. And there's, I think, 8 brothers and 1 sister in the section, up to page 8.
Okay, so you see 8 brothers up to page 8. How many brothers do you see up to page 7, line 22?
Line 22. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7 brothers. Huh, that's an interesting number. Yes, brother is mentioned 7 times in this first chunk of chapter 4. Now, there's a logical reason why there's no brother before this. The only people who exist are Adam and Eve.
Right.
Right? So that's
Mhm.
that's a logical reason. But There may be some thematic reasons why brother is mentioned 7 times in this. Very good.
Yeah.
Good observation, Carol. Somebody else.
Pastor, can you mute? Because somebody's talking and you're not very clear to us.
I'm glad that I'm sometimes clear to you, even if right now I'm not. Andy, yeah.
Using Lord and not Lord God.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it's in Genesis 1, it was God. Okay. Then in Genesis 2, it was Lord God. And then now it's
Lord, all capital.
Lord, all capital. Yeah, this should be Lord. God, Lord God, and now it's just Lord. Mostly, there is a God in there too, but mostly it's Lord. What do we say about the name Lord? All caps in our text.
The name for Yahweh.
It's translating the word Yahweh, which is God's personal name. Okay, so this is God interacting very personally with these people. Excellent, good observation, Andy. Excellent. Somebody else, what's your best observation from this section?
Pastor, this is Donna. I saw a lot of conversation. Lord said, and then Cain answered him. So he was still speaking and conversing with people.
A lot of conversation. I read a commentary this week about this section, and one of the things that the commentator said, and I did not know this, was that as far as we can tell, the book of Genesis is the first document ever written that includes the record of conversation. That this was just not that recording people's actual words, just talking to each other back and forth was never a thing in literature until the book of Genesis. Just a thought there. That's very interesting, right? So we have a lot of back and forth here. We got Cain and the Lord talking to one another. Yeah, excellent. What else? Somebody else. What's a good observation that you saw?
It's the first time in scripture that a person is cursed.
Okay, yeah, Joe, good job. We'll come back to you, Nicole, in just a second.
That one's, Sarah gets credit for that one.
All right, Sarah, good job. Cursed, right? We see that in page 7, line 13. Cain is cursed. We mentioned this in Genesis chapter 3, that Adam is not cursed, the ground is. Eve is not cursed, the serpent is cursed. So Cain joins the serpent here in being a person who is cursed, or a being who is cursed, and is the first human who is cursed. And just specifically, Sarah or Joe, in what way is Cain cursed?
From the ground.
From the ground. He's cursed from the ground. There somehow is a separation between Cain and the ground. Okay. Now, when you read the word curse in the Bible, you should not think of this as being like a voodoo ritual. Okay, where there's an incantation that's being spoken to have evil beings, demons or whatever, putting a hex on somebody. Okay, this is not something that God does. That's not something that God has to do. Okay, what God is saying here is that Cain is separated from the ground. The curse is always contrasted with blessing. The blessings that the ground would give, it will not give to Cain. He will not receive the blessings from the ground. Instead, he'll receive a curse from the ground. Very good. Very good. Something else. What else did you observe?
Pastor.
Pastor.
Karen.
Oh, I want to go to Nicole next. Nicole had one.
Oh, no, I saw what I call a lot of personalization. Like before with Adam and Eve, it was like God talking to both of them together, but now he kept saying you, or your.
Okay, so sort of a direct personal conversation. Yeah, direct personal conversation. Yeah, with
Or
Cain.
like saying it's you, so it couldn't be anybody else because it's you.
So it's very specific to this one individual. Yeah, very good. A couple of people were,
Pastor,
yes.
on line 20.
Yep.
And the Lord put a mark on Cain.
Hmm.
It's the first time I noticed God putting a mark on somebody. You always hear the mark of the beast.
Oh, yeah, good point. In the book of Revelation, there are two marks. There's the mark of the Lamb that God puts to seal the foreheads of all those who belong to him. And in mockery of that, in contrast to that, there's the mark of the beast, which the beast of Revelation puts on the foreheads of those who are following him. Okay, so there's two marks there. Here, there's a mark that God puts on Cain. We'll use the term the mark of Cain a lot to talk about, oh, that person has the mark of Cain, like that's a bad thing, right? Oh, they've got the mark of Cain on them. I think we don't use that phrase as much anymore. 100 years ago, it was used a lot to talk about people who were to be shunned, people who should not be allowed into polite society. They've got the mark of Cain on them. How is the mark used for Cain, Janet? What was it why did God mark Cain?
So no one would.
That was Janet who said that, right?
That no one else could punish him.
Yeah, to protect him.
Yeah,
It was a mark of protection.
Yeah, that's what I got from it.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? God puts the mark on Cain to protect him from vengeance, right? So that nobody can take revenge on him. That's excellent. Good observation. What else? Yeah, Andy.
Was there anybody else?
Was there somebody else on Zoom who had one that they were championing?
Karen did, yeah.
Aaron.
A line 8, sin is mentioned for the first time.
Exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
You took it away from me.
Minds think alike.
Sin. We haven't had that word before in Genesis. And interesting about what it says about sin, right?
Crouching at the door.
It's crouching at the door. It desires to have you, right? But you must rule over it. Its desire is contrary to you, it says in the English Standard Version. It has a desire to get you, but you must rule over it. It's actually the word sin there. Some scholars believe that Hebrew word is a cognate with an Akkadian word that is the name of a demon. Okay, so sometimes you'll hear people say sin is the demon at the door. Okay, this idea that sin is crouching there, wants to devour you. That's this personalization of sin. Certainly, this text personalizes sin, right? Sin is crouching at the door and it wants to have you. Now, let me ask you this. Last week, I said you should put a pin in this because you're going to find these two words show up again. There are two words here in this sentence. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. Where have we seen desire and rule before used in a sentence?
In the punishment of Adam and Eve.
Punishment of Adam and Eve. No.
Punishment of Eve.
The punishment of Eve. There you go. Yeah, I'm sorry, Joe. I'm being picky because I know you can take it. Yeah, the punishment of Eve, right? The God's declaration of the consequences of Eve's sin. What does he say to Eve that involves desire and rule?
She'll be for her husband, but he will rule over her.
Her desire will be for her husband, but he will rule over her. And we talked about how desire could have a lot of different meanings, right? It could be that she really sexually desires him, right? And that sexual desire gives him power over her. It could be just that she loves him, right? But he's going to dominate her, okay? I think it's interesting that in the very next story, these two words are used again. In this instance, how is the word desire used? What does the desire mean in the story of Cain? When sin desires Cain,
Temptation.
what does sin want to do to Cain?
Distracted.
destroy it.
Destroy it, right?
Destroy
Sin,
it.
this is a sin. Sin is there. It's going to devour you. It wants to take you and eat you, right?
Mhm.
It's not a happy desire. It's not a
No.
positive desire. It's a menacing desire, right?
Yeah. So far, all the times the desire is brought up, it's a negative thing, because there's another one on page 5, when the serpent is talking. I think the serpent is
Yeah, it says
talking,
it's desirable to make
tree.
one wise.
was to be desired to make one wise.
Good point.
Always negative.
It's always something that you want to consume it, or you want to take it in and destroy it. So here, I think this gives you some insight back into Genesis 3, the battle of the sexes, this desire to conquer one another. And ultimately, what God says is that the man will conquer the woman. That's not his plan. It's not his hope. It's not his created desire, but it is the result of this battle of the sexes that comes as a result of the fall.
I also noticed something else. In
Yeah,
that
Sue.
same sentence, when I read that sentence, and if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, makes me think of sin as wait a second, that sin is the cause of you not doing well. But I think of sin as the consequence of not doing well. It's not the cause, it's the consequence. But here, it's definitely
So
the
it says
cause.
it says that if you do not do well, then sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is contrary for you, and you must rule over it. So let me throw that out. Does that sound like a consequence, or does that sound like the cause? Is sin the consequence or the cause in that sentence?
The consequence.
Yeah.
Sounds like a danger.
Because I'm thinking here, desire to me too could also, it's desire. It's want for you. It's need. What it needs from you is contrary to what you should want for yourself. That's how I'm
Yeah.
seeing it. So if that desire surpasses what's contrary to what you want, then the sin becomes
Yeah.
ultimate.
But it's
I
backwards.
think
The
it's
sin
a
will come in.
possible consequence.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So what God is, go ahead.
There's a path that you can take. If you do not do well, there is a path that you can either do this or it can lead you to follow sin.
Yeah, so this is where it leads, right? If you continue to not do well, and we haven't talked about what that means yet, but if you continue to not do well, sin wants to have you. And if you don't rule over it, it's going to destroy you, right? Is the idea. So let's talk about what's going on with Cain and Abel, okay? What are some of the things that you notice about, by the way, did anybody count the number of times that Cain is mentioned in this section?
Yeah, I didn't count it, but it's
No.
Pastor, before we move on from that verse, can we pause for a minute just on the fact that Cain knows what a door is?
Sure, okay. Cain knows what a door is.
Good point, Joe.
Cain's not just living out, in a sleeping bag. He's got a house. Okay.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, vocabulary we haven't had yet.
12 times.
No, keep going. Count
Oh,
again.
I thought you meant just on page 7.
Yeah, just on page
Where's the
7 up to
story
line
stop?
22. You missed a couple.
I did.
Yeah. So Cain, someone want to count Cain?
The 13 before and the end of line 22.
You should count 14.
There's 14 on page 7, but one of them is after 22, which is the story.
No, I think there's 14 before that. I think if you count it again, you'll find 14 there. Cain is mentioned 14 times in this section. Abel is mentioned 7 times. And brother is mentioned 7 times.
It's only 13 before line 22. Before the end of 22.
Yeah, I got 13 also.
Before the end
Okay,
of this sentence in 22.
But that's not important.
So maybe it's up until line till Enoch.
Yeah.
But in this story, in the story of the confrontation between Cain and Abel, Cain is twice as important as Abel. The story is about Cain more than about Abel. And 7 is a number that's supposed to sort of trigger people if you're a Hebrew reader, having something mentioned 7 times invests it with some importance, especially when 7 is used in the story itself. But talk to me about Cain and Abel. What happens with Cain and Abel?
I have something sort of related to that.
Go ahead.
That I found. This is something that kind of goes back to page 2, when God gives humanity commands. He says to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens and over the living things. And in the beginning of this passage, we have fulfillment of all of those things.
Okay.
We see they are fruitful and they multiply, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Adam and Eve have 2 children.
Yep.
And then Cain is a worker of the ground, so he's subduing the earth.
Yeah.
And Abel is a keeper of sheep, so he is having dominion over the living things that move on the earth.
Very good. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm gonna. How do I write that observation down? I'm gonna say is fulfilling. Fulfilling the creation mandate. Very good.
I feel like Ed wanted to say something.
Bev, did you have something?
Well, I wrote down on line 11 that I thought when Cain answered God, I do not know. I thought that was the first outright lie.
Oh yeah, right. So Cain lies.
Yeah.
And Cain's lie is about knowing. So let's just take a little trip. Let's take a little trip about knowing. Okay. Let's look through for the word know, or any of its permutations. Right. In line 1 on page 7, Adam knew his wife. Okay, and that's a literal translation of the Hebrew word there. The Hebrew word there is yada, Y-A-D-A. Yada means to know. Okay. For instance, and so yada means to know. It means to know in an intimate way, to know deeply, to know intimately. That's why the word is used as a euphemism for sex. Okay, in the Bible, it's not always a euphemism for sex, but it is often used as a euphemism for sex because sex is about more than a physical act. It's also about a connection and a knowing of each other, right? So it says that Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived. So obviously it's about sex, right? It's not, that's not how conception works. You say, oh, I know that person. Oh, she's pregnant now. This is about sex, right? So Adam knew, he yadad his wife, and she conceived. Interestingly, if you, it's 8 o'clock, Mom. You'll hear people sometimes say, he did this, and then he did this, and yada, 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 okay? That's this word, okay? And in Yiddish, which is a Hebrew, pidgin Hebrew, in Yiddish, the phrase yada, yada, yada meant you only used it when you said, well, the 2 of them went upstairs and yada, 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 okay? That's what the yada, yada, yada means. Our good friend Ken, who's a member of our church, uses yada, yada, yada all the time, and it cracks me up because he doesn't know what it means. I do. All right.
So in saying that, then, he knew his wife Eve, she conceived and bore Cain.
Yep.
But then he didn't know Eve, but she bore Abel. So what's the difference in the 2?
So
why was there a different
phrase?
Description? Yeah, or
I don't know. What I will say is that he does use a different phrase, right? Yeah. He knows his wife, she conceives. Usually in these kinds of formulas, the husband knows the wife at the beginning, and you might use other phrases as you go along. Certainly down on line 22, Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch, okay? And here, what does Cain say about Abel? He says, I do not know, okay? Am I supposed to be intimately acquainted with my brother's doings, right? Am I supposed to be He says, my brother's keeper. Where have we seen the word keep before in our text?
In the garden, Adam is supposed to keep guard of.
Oh, yes. Yes. Adam and Eve are supposed to keep the garden, right? They were and we said there, the word keep means to guard, right? To protect against bad things happening to the garden. Adam and Eve are supposed to keep the garden. Then when they sin, the garden is kept against them. It's guarded against Adam and Eve. And now Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? Am I supposed to guard my brother? Am I supposed to make sure my brother comes to no harm? Is that my job, God? What's the answer? Yes. Heck yeah. Heck yeah, you're supposed to keep your brother. Heck yeah, you're supposed to keep him from coming to harm. And what Cain is saying is, I can't be bothered to protect my brother. And what he's done is not just not protect him, he's killed him. Right? This is Cain not just lying, he's lying through his teeth. This is Cain with a vicious, evil lie. This is a bad, and the fact that he does not know, and the fact that he's not his brother's keeper, points us to why the lie is so bad. Because Cain is supposed to protect his brother, and he's not. He's supposed to be intimately acquainted with what his brother does, and he treats his brother like he's a stranger. Right? Yeah. Good observation. I can't remember now who pointed that out, but fantastic about knowing and keeping. What else? So what else do we see about in this story? There's so much good stuff here. I gotta figure out when we're gonna transition.
Well, before he ended up killing his brother, he had gotten angry first because of the offering that he had bought.
Yeah.
So he had, at first, so I'm thinking, because it says Cain brought to the Lord an offering, but then of the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat. So I grew up like in Sunday school, they would explain, well, Cain didn't bring his first crop. He brought inferior. And I'm thinking, okay, how did Abel know to bring the first fruit? I mean, because you're thinking they're still learning, and this is a new thing. Yeah. But what I'm getting out of it, based on Cain's response, how he's behaving, is that I don't know if the word lackadaisical can.
Yes, it's a perfect word.
Very cavalier.
Yeah, about
lackadaisical, cavalier. Yeah. Cain is blah about his offering. He brings some. Now, it is an offering, but it's not. But Abel brings the best. Abel brings the stuff that he would prefer to eat, right? The best, the juiciest, the best lamb, right? He gives that to the Lord. Whereas Abel brings some of the produce of the field. He doesn't bring the best. It's sort of perfunctory. It's lackadaisical. It's casual. He is not. So some people would say, well, God prefers a blood sacrifice to a fruit sacrifice. That's not true, actually. There are plenty of places in Leviticus where God talks about giving fruit sacrifices and grain sacrifices and wine sacrifices. Anything can be used as a sacrifice, okay? And there's specific regulations about how to do that. What you're right, Nicole. What's instrumental here is Cain's heart and Abel's heart. Abel wants to bring the best to the Lord. He's passionate about his sacrifice. He wants to bring an offering to the Lord as a genuine, heartfelt offering. Whereas for Cain, it's casual, it's lackadaisical. And so God has no regard for Cain's offering. God does not have any interest in you just checking off a box in your worship.
That's where the desire happened, because his heart wasn't fully into it. And I think that's why God says, well, if you do well, this would happen. So why are you upset? Because I think God said that to him because Cain knew in his heart. He knew, just like he's lying about he doesn't know where his brother is. He knew he did, but I think he expected, even though he didn't do well, he should still get an applause.
So who's Cain angry at?
God.
Boom, yeah, Sue. Yeah, right? He's angry at God. The person who's been unfair to him is not Abel. He's angry at God, and he takes it out on Abel, right? Because Abel bears the image of God, of course, right? So does Cain. But Abel he bears the image of God, and Cain is furious. He wants to take it out on God, but you can't kill God. But you can kill
Chose the easier
the image
target.
of God. Yeah, pick the easier target, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots more here. We're going to skip to go on the next section, but you guys have seen so much good stuff here. We didn't ask the question, who does Cain think is going to kill him? Right? That's a common question. We'll get there in a bit. But I do want to point out at the end that God puts the mark on him and says that there's going to be sevenfold vengeance. Sevenfold. Okay, that's interesting. Sevenfold vengeance on anyone who kills Cain. Right? Now, that's basically just a way to protect Cain, right? Okay. God will judge anybody who picks up and kills Cain. Cain whines about his punishment. Okay, he's killed his brother. Okay, but this is too severe. But God says, "Look, I'll protect you." There's grace that's there. There's a ton more that we can talk about, but let's go to this next section, which is the end of page 7 and going into page 8, line 10. Now, not everybody studied this. I get it. So you can look at it now. If you have studied it, what's a good observation that you saw in this section?
Who is Cain's wife?
That's the other big question, right? Who's Cain afraid is going to kill him, and where did Cain get his wife? What I can say is the text doesn't tell us. Okay, the text doesn't tell us. We're going to come into a genealogy that in chapter 5, where that says that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. Okay, so that's certainly one possibility. Some theologians say that maybe God had multiple people that He created. That creates problems in the New Testament, because the New Testament tells us that sin came into the world through Adam, the father of us all. So how can Adam be the father of us all if God created lots of different families? I don't think that's the case. I think that Cain is afraid of his brothers and sisters who have been born or who will be born in the future, and he's afraid of, and that's where he gets his wife as well. What observations in this second section here?
Enoch is mentioned a few times, and name kept coming up.
Name. Yeah, there's a lot of repetition of naming. Yeah.
And fathered.
Name, father. So there's more family relationship words that are here. Yep, very good.
Yeah, brother, sister.
Brother, sister, good. So father is used in some interesting ways, right? We see that on like page 8, line 1, Irad fathered Mahujael. Okay. Actually, turns out that word fathered is the same word as to Enoch was born, Irad. That's the same word. And that word appears a lot of times in this passage. But so he fathered Mahujael. We know what that means, right? It sort of was his dad or his granddad, maybe, because that's possible in Hebrew too. But then there's some weird ways that it's the word father is used, like in line 4, right? Ada bore Jabal, or Jabal, whatever how to pronounce that. But bore there is the same word as fathered, which is, and so fathered is that definitely, not only guys can father, right? Ada bore fathers Jabal. Jabal is the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. Does that mean that everybody who dwells in a tent and have livestock is descended from Jabal? No, it means that he's sort of the origin of that practice, right? That's why the word father there is being used in sort of a metaphorical way. His brother's name in line 5 was Jubal. He was the father of all who play the lyre and pipe. Bethany Miller plays the flute, right? Is Jabal her dad? No, Andy's her dad, right? Jabal's been long gone. But Jabal is the one who started this process, right? Started this practice.
I never looked at it like that. I actually thought it meant, like when you think about the Israelites and the different tribes, that this tribe was known for this and that tribe was known for that. So I was thinking of that in the same way.
These are the guys who started these practices. We're in the line of who? Whose descendants are we talking about here?
Cain.
Cain. Okay. So we are right now in the line of Cain. and we're talking about the invention of sort of nomadic shepherding, right? We have the invention of music. We have the invention of, with Tubal-Cain, he's the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron, right? So we have the development of tool making and machine making, right?
We also have iron instruments thousands of years before the Iron Age.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what I was thinking, the Bronze Age and the Iron Age.
Yeah. So one thing that we do know is that they did have meteorite iron. So iron is you can dig iron up from the ground, or you can get it from meteorites, and you can cold forge iron from meteorites. So you're right, the Iron Age is still a ways off, but we do have evidence that iron tools were used earlier. They just weren't forged tools. They didn't use it.
I wonder.
Right, furnace, yeah.
I wonder because I mean the line of Cain invents this like the nomadic shepherding and the music and the making of tools. I wonder if that's because Cain can no longer work the ground.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting speculation. We see in the line of Cain, we see the development of all these cultural things. Okay, let me ask you this. What do we see out of the line of Seth? What does the line of Seth develop? It's the last bit of this passage. The line of Seth makes one key development. They don't develop music. They don't develop shepherding. They don't develop. They call the tool making. They develop worship, right? You have the line of Cain that develops all this cultural stuff, and you've got Seth's line that develops worship, right? The line of Seth invests themselves in God, whereas the line of Cain invests themselves in stuff that could distract you from God. Now, nothing wrong with tools, right, Andy? Nothing wrong with tools.
Absolutely.
Right, Jim, Dave, some women like tools too. Nothing wrong with tools. Tools are awesome, right? Nothing wrong with music. Music is great. Tools and music can be used to worship God, ultimately, right? But they can also be a distraction. They can also be things that are sort of, you are cursed from the ground. Here are ways to sort of alleviate the curse. But Seth's line found the way to alleviate the curse, right? What's the alleviation of the curse? The alleviation of the curse is call on the name of the Lord, right? That's when you have that relationship with God, that's what Seth's line develops. Cain's line develops all these great cultural things. Cain's line also develops something else, which is awful. What does Cain's line also develop in this? Murders, right? Cain's line develops, first of all, polygamy, right?
Right.
Which never works well in the Bible, okay? Polygamy, and then multiple mass murder, right? With Lamech. I want to point a couple things out about this because we're running out of time, but we got to talk about this. The prosperity of Cain's line is a dark prosperity, right? It's relief from the curse. It's not salvation from the curse. When you count down this line, and I have time to do it here, but you got Cain, right? Let's do it. Yeah. What's Cain's son's name?
Enoch.
Enoch. And who does Enoch bear?
Irad.
Erod. Okay. And the next is
Mahujael.
Mahujael. Yeah. Okay. And next?
Methuselah.
Methuselah. Maybe? Lamech. Okay. And so that was Adam first. Okay, so Adam, Cain, Enoch, Irad, Mahujael, and Lamech are in this genealogy. What's interesting about that list? 7. Okay, yes, 7. And then in the last one, Lamech has 3 sons, okay, that are mentioned, okay? So there's just a line that goes down and then 3. Boom, 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 okay? Put a pin in that.
Yeah, because I have a question. I was a little bit confused when I was doing it, because it mentioned Enoch here and there's Enoch in other.
Yeah.
So if Cain's line is cursed, Is this the same Enoch that walked with God?
What's your father's name?
Homer?
Homer.
Yes.
Only one in the world named Homer?
That's a weird name, I think. As far as I know.
No, there's tons of Homers, right? We got an Andy, we got a Lynn,
My dad has
we got a
weird
Sue,
names.
there's a lot of Sues, there's a lot of Timothys, there's a lot of Enochs too. There's not the same Enoch.
Okay, that's
Um,
what confused me because before I
And
couldn't separate.
what
it.
you'll see in Genesis 5, when you get to Genesis 5, which is the next chapter passage, I want you to count to Enoch, okay?
But even before all that, this is the end of this line, because if Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold.
That's what caught me too.
Yeah.
That's the end.
So Lamech is boasting to his wives, sorry. This man hurt me and I killed him, right? One of my professors, right, put this, he said, he bumped into me and I bumped him off, right? So there's this sense that, you know, it's not an eye for an eye and a tooth for tooth. This is, I'm taking your whole freaking body for an eye, right? I'm going to kill you dead for this. And then he says, you think that Cain's protected from vengeance. I'm protected from vengeance because I'll kill every one of you, right?
Oh, I didn't get it because it's saying
No.
if Cain's revenge. That's the part. So
Right.
that's protection, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, if
Okay.
Cain is protected by the fact that God's going to inflict vengeance sevenfold for the death of Cain, you touch me and I'll take vengeance.
So you
That's
think he has a
77.
license to kill pretty much.
Yeah, right. You don't mess with me, right? Come at me, bro, is what he's saying. Come at me, bro, right? I'll take you all on. I'll take you all out, right?
Well, I hate to rain on his parade, but I think God did.
Well, yeah. So I mean, God rained on his parade. Yeah. If you watch, it's interesting. If you watch the movie Noah, which was starring Russell Crowe as Noah, it's an odd movie. Not everybody likes this movie, but I love it. But all this, the Tubal Cain is a character there. Lamech is a character there. The evil Lamech is a character there. And you see the results of this wicked line developed in a really interesting way in the movie. The movie pays very close attention to this stuff. So here is, now I can ask you this. Why does Lamech boast about this to his wives? Why is it important that he boasts to his wives about this?
That's the part I'm trying to figure out.
If your husband came home and said to you, I got a hair trigger, baby. Anybody messes with me and I kill him. How would you interpret that?
Well, first of all, he's telling him that, so I guess that he could keep them in line.
Yes, exactly. Here's Lamech saying, Ada, Zillah, where's my dinner? Ada, Zillah, how come? Snap to it, babes, because I got a hair trigger. I'll take you out if you mess with me, right? It's a threat to his wives, right? At least implicitly. So here is Lamech. He's an evil, awful guy, right? So what Cain's line is developing here, Cain's line, we have the development of all this culture, this great stuff that can be used for good, but also we have these things that are used explicitly for evil, polygamy and mass murder, or the threat of mass murder at least, that he does there. And I got to finish up our section here. We'll look in lines 10 through 13. Adam knows his wife again. She bears a son, called his name Seth, because God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel. Offspring was a key word in our previous passage, where God said that there would be an offspring of the woman and an offspring of the serpent. Okay, so we see the offspring of the serpent, those who are following the serpent's ways in the line of Cain. And we see the offspring. Now, what offspring of the woman? Why is that important? Well, her other offspring are gone now, right? Cain is away from the blessing of the Lord, and Abel is dead. So it's the continuation of God's promise to her that there would be an offspring. She's celebrating that here. God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, because Cain killed him. Seth has a son, calls his name Enosh. At that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. If you count it, I believe, you count it, all the mentions of God and the Lord in this passage, in this book thus far, this is mention number 70. Mention number 70 of God in some way. Okay? Which, okay, couple things. Why did I want to stop this passage here? One is this, right? It brings the whole thing to a completion. Second thing is we've got the sevenfold, 77-fold, which is echoing the Cain thing. These two are supposed to be together, I think. This section has to be together. Okay, there's a lot more that we can say about this. On your handout, I gave you a ton of cross references to the Old Testament and the New Testament. We're not going to go over them, but it's interesting that Jesus actually refers to the story of Lamech and Ada and Zillah in a very interesting way. When Peter says, Jesus, how often should I forgive my brother? Should I forgive my brother 7 times? Right. And Jesus says, I don't say 7, I say 70 times 7, right? Jesus picks up on the words of Lamech's murder boast to talk about how we ought to be forgiving, right? It's just a fascinating little nugget there that it's just really wonderful and fun to see. A ton of cross references there, but I want to give you, before we do some interpretation, I want to give you this poem by William Ernest Henley. I'm going to give you guys, I need to have a copy, so you guys look over it. This is a poem called Invictus. This is, I think, a poem that Cain could have said, right? What does he say? Invictus. Now, this is a very popular poem and a beautiful poem. I sent this out to you guys by email. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed, right? Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. It's a great poem. This is the poem that got Nelson Mandela through decades of prison in apartheid South Africa. He clung to this poem as kind of one of those things that really helped him make it through. But if you read it as if it's Cain talking, I think it illuminates the pride and arrogance of the soul that says, I'm in control of my fate, baby. I'll give you I love that poem. I wanted to give it to you. The other thing I'm going to give you is from Bev Yaddo, actually. Bev Yaddo pointed me to these 2 devotionals from Our Daily Bread for March 16th and March 18th for you to read at your leisure. But Bev spotted these, and these are just cool stories that celebrate God's glorious creation. So don't read them now.
I have a question.
I'm not sure I have time for a question. We gotta. Okay. What is it?
I was saying with Cain, God put a mark on him to protect him. So maybe you can't answer the question. So does that mean, and then all his descendants become all these killers? Does that mean he never got forgiveness? Is he like a Judas Iscariot?
We don't know.
Okay.
But this Sunday, I'm preaching about Judas Iscariot, and we'll talk about whether Judas Iscariot got forgiveness. That's one of the major points of the sermon this Sunday. So if you're watching on YouTube, tune in for our March 28th Sunday service. We'll talk about Judas Iscariot. Okay, let's so we look, we listen, we live. We've looked. Okay. Now, just briefly, because I wanted to have more time to, but hour and a half, go back. Let's listen. What is this passage teaching us? Okay, what is it trying to teach us? And typically we'll ask, what is this passage teaching us about God? What is this passage teaching about us? What is this passage teaching about the world that we live in? But you don't have to stick those categories. What do you learn in this passage? What is it trying to teach us?
Pastor?
Give a suggestion. Is that Donna?
No, Janet.
Oh, go ahead, Janet.
Take responsibility for our actions.
Take responsibility for your actions. Boy, yeah, right? You have Cain, who follows in his parents' footsteps, right? They try to shift the blame to other people. Cain just flat out lies. He takes that responsibility and he doesn't even give it to somebody else. He's like, I don't know, I'm not. Yeah. So it's definitely a theme here is to take responsibility for your own actions. Absolutely. What else?
Give our best to God. If we're offering anything, give our best.
Yeah, there's certainly a bit about worship here, right? You're bringing an offering to God. Bring your best. Bring an offering that comes from the heart. And that's the offering that God rejoices in. That theme will be throughout the Old Testament, right? And then the New. Somebody else.
Don't let your feelings get out of control.
Yeah, right. So sin desires to control Cain, right? But he has to rule over it, right? Cain's feelings are leading him into sin. Doesn't mean that feelings are bad, but when Cain lets his feelings, his anger towards God, get out of control, he winds up killing his brother and wrecking his life, wrecking his own life and ending his brother's life. Yeah, very good. What are some other things? What is this passage teaching?
But it should be teaching us to love one another. It's not after Cain and in that line, but before then, God is saying you need to love one another. You need to care for one another.
Right? Are you your brother's keeper? Yes. And interestingly, if you go to the New Testament, one of the places where the New Testament talks about Cain is in 1 John chapter 3, which is the next 1 John passage I'm going to preach on in a couple weeks after Easter. And that's what God says. That's what it says in 1 John. Don't hate your brother like Cain. Right? Cain is the premier example of someone who does not love his brother. And that's what the message of 1 John, right? We need to love our brother. We need to be our brother's keeper. Very good. One more. Something else. What else is this passage teaching?
Pastor, it's Carol. I see God as merciful in this because he always gives a warning about what is gonna, what will affect us negatively or, drive us down the wrong path. So.
And to piggyback off of that, God said when Cain cries out for mercy from God, which he definitely doesn't deserve, God gives it to him. He says, I'll put this mark on you.
There's mercy before Cain sinned. There's mercy after Cain sinned. Right? We mentioned how we're now, it's the Lord in this entire story because he's interacting very personally with everybody. He interacts very personally with Cain. There's this dialogue which happens. God is personally, he cares passionately about Cain, doesn't want Cain to go the wrong way. But then when Cain does go the wrong way, God has mercy on him and extends that grace to him. This is the God that we serve, right? A God who has grace before sin and has grace after sin. There's a ton of things that we could say. There's a lot of stuff that we can pull out of this passage. I want to give you just 1 minute to still your soul, quiet yourself, and just listen to God. Lord, what is the message you want to say to me today? What's the message you have for me today from this passage? You take a pen and write it out on the page of your text there, maybe on the blank page on the one side. What is it that God's saying to you today about this, out of this passage?
one thing that was very stark before, even with the serpent and the sinning, God was still very present. And yeah, we know that sin separates us, but it was after he put the mark on Cain, and then it says, and Cain went away from the presence of the Lord. And then if you read further on, because I've read like all of it, God was like at a distance now. He wasn't walking with them. He wasn't like there, because I think he was there. So I think all of this started, like, you know, since separate, but this, it really started that.
You definitely see a
separation.
drift,
Yeah.
a drift away from God. Yeah, absolutely. Does someone want to share? You don't have to, nobody has to, but if someone wants to share, what did God say to you tonight from this passage?
For me, the takeaway was God's conversation. What God said to Cain after the offering, but before the murder. Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. And I feel like that's where I am. It's, you know, for me, I feel like God's message to me was him saying, you're in a place where you don't need to be upset. I'm here for you. And if Cain had listened, God was there comforting him. He was saying, hey, you have a choice. You have a fork in the road. You have a choice to make here. And the history of the world would be different if Cain had accepted God's compassion. And that's a choice that I have every day to rather than getting upset and feeling like I'm failing God, and I you know, what chance do I really have? Not that I would go kill my brother, but
Good.
yeah, that's good. I'm sure my brothers both appreciate that.
This can't be used in a court of law against you.
What's that?
Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law, because we're recording this. Yeah, and you know, what I submit to you, Joe, is that if you make the choice to turn towards God, it changes history today, right? It can change our history today. If we choose to turn towards God rather than away from Him, it's a history. It changes the rest of history for us as well.
Let me just finish my thought real quick.
Yeah.
What I was getting at was shoot. I keep losing it when I open my mouth and talk. That I'm okay. You know, Cain was about to kill his brother. God knew that, and he showed him compassion. And if God can walk into Cain's house in that moment and love him, then, you know, I mean, he's not going to physically walk into my house, but that's the kind of relationship that he wants with each of us. It's very hard to think of it that way. It's so much easier to just think of him as, you know, the disapproving old guy in the sky. And he, you know, even someone who had failed at his offering and was going to kill his brother, God wanted a relationship.
Amen. Somebody else? Anybody else have something you want to share that God spoke to you tonight from this passage?
It's just that for me, it kind of coincided with what we're talking about today. We're doing pizza, but one of the interesting points that came out was that when we accept God and we become saved, Elizabeth says we now have God's DNA in us. So the effort is not just from us. So, and then, you know, Peter was calling us to love fervently, zealously, purely, genuinely. So for me, that's what it is, which is why I talked about the separation. So it really, again, brought home, which is why God was already warning, if you know, this takes hold of you, then the sin is going to be the consequences. I understand what he's saying, but just to, as Timothy says, piggyback off that, it's no longer just us. You know, when we are, the DNA is now in us, so we don't have to fight the battle of sin on our own. And I think that's it when we think of God disapproving me, because I go through that. I talk about it all the time, feeling guilty about sinning, but then I realize that's not who God is when he looks at me. I am looking at myself that way because I know what he says, but that's not how he sees us. And for me, that's a good thing.
And ultimately, he looks at us through Jesus.
Yes. Amen.
We're going to pray, and then we're going to close up our time. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for our time together tonight in your word. Thank you for this Old Testament passage, which includes a genealogy and yet speaks so purely and beautifully to our souls. God, I pray that you would help each of us to worship you in spirit and in truth. Help us to have that close relationship with you, where we recognize your grace before, during, and after even our sins. And Lord, where we recognize that that our worship of you, that our turning towards you is a history-making opportunity to set history on the right path for us into the future. God, I pray that you bless every person who's wrestled with your word here tonight, whether live and in person on Zoom or through YouTube. God, I pray that you would continue to use this passage in our lives in the week to come. Lord, we love you and we trust you, and we give our lives to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your being here. Next week, so again, your homework is start from page 8, line 13, and keep going. Find the end of the next passage, and we'll talk about it next week. You're also free to keep studying the passages we've already studied. You will find more and more and more if you dig more and more and more in it. There's lots of stuff there. Thanks, everybody. Love you.
Thank you, Pastor. Good night.
Pastor, good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good
Night.
night.
Bye.